Rebecca, what a wild time, what a ride. Let's take it all the way back to the beginning, when I first started on this journey. I'm looking for Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. It's a book I want to finish by the end of the year, and also for my current manuscript as some inspiration for one of my characters. And I have it checked out from the library on Hoopla, but I'm taking a lot of notes, and I want to have access to those notes like in the book after I'm done reading it, and that won't be the case once it goes back to the library. So I'm off to the secondhand bookstore to see if I can find a copy of Rebecca. I found it! I got my copy of Rebecca. I'm very excited. Only thing is, check this out. Look at this type. Look at this type. I can't. This is painful to even think about. So I'm going to continue reading the book in the Hoopla app, the e-reader, and then I will just make all of my annotations in here. Okay, time for another Rebecca update. I think, about a third of the way done. I just finished chapter 12. Well, I actually finished chapter 12 a little while ago, and then I had to take a break. It was actually a very intense chapter because our main character is having not so much a fight, but a pretty serious disagreement with her husband, with Maxim. It was one of those things where you're thinking, is he actually a decent guy? Is this relationship healthy? But at the same time, it's one of the first times that you see our main character kind of stand up for herself, which is good. Like, anytime you feel comfortable standing up for yourself with a partner, that's a good thing. So she's getting, so our character is still really struggling with how much it seems like everybody in this household loves and remembers Rebecca, the deceased wife. And so she feels like she's constantly being compared to her, and she's constantly in her head, which I kind of understand that being in her head where she's thinking, oh, they're probably thinking that Rebecca would have done it this way. They're probably thinking that I'm just so stupid and don't understand things. They're probably thinking that Rebecca had better taste than me and that she had better social graces and was so much more fun. all these things, which, to be fair, except for one person who kind of takes her side and says, look, Rebecca wasn't all that, all right? Your new husband is very happy to have you here, but except for him, which I'm glad that scene happened. I'm glad we have that sort of reality check that's being planted. But except for him, everyone else is kind of like, all the other servants in the house are like, Rebecca would have done it this way. So she's constantly kind of being made to feel like she doesn't know what she's doing. Also, Maxim is being very, sometimes impatient with her, and also sometimes very non-communicative, where he's clearly upset, clearly doesn't want to do something, but instead of like telling her why or where it's coming from, he just kind of snaps at her or ignores her or is like, oh, stop doing that. Why are you doing that? And that is, I'm like, that. I hope that at some point he finally has to like open his mouth and talk about what's going on with him, because clearly there's something that he's not telling our main character that's really bothering him, but he's not telling it. I think he's trying to do that thing that we do. We don't want to talk about something, or we don't want to remember or relive something. We just try to push it away, and all it does is make you also push out the good, or like really be unfair to somebody that you care about. So that's kind of where we're at with this. I had this line at the end of the chapter. At least Jasper likes her now. Jasper is one of the dogs. And at the very end of this chapter, where she has this fight with her husband, the dog comes and sits in her lap, and she's like, because she thinks that even the dog would rather Rebecca is still around. So if she's thinking the dog even prefers Rebecca, she's like in dire straits here. But Jasper comes and sits on her lap after this fight, and I'm like, well, at least Jasper likes her now. At least the dog likes her. I really, there was this fight comes about because of this whole drama with Mrs. Danvers, who is so far the main antagonist, other than the deceased Rebecca. Mrs. Danvers is the main antagonist. She's sort of like the head house runner, and she is explained as being somebody who adored Rebecca, and so is clearly not happy with this new wife, and she's the one that really hits home the Rebecca would have done it this way. And she's the one that makes our main character feel the most stupid, the most inadequate. And what's happened is that the main character had just been trying to set things up to her liking, and she accidentally breaks something. And she's still so uncomfortable and so self-conscious that she tries to hide the damage, and then Mrs. Danvers like confronts her on it. And so then she feels even more stupid because it's happening in front of her husband. And her husband's like, why are you even letting Mrs. Danvers push you around? It's not like she's God. And I think I wrote down in here, he very much, because he's the man of the house, he doesn't have to deal with all this the domestic workings and the dynamics. He doesn't have to deal with it. So it's easy for him to say, I wrote here, this is the benefit of rich male privilege. He doesn't have to deal with any of the matters and doesn't know how awful it can be, and particularly how women can sometimes be to each other because they both have limited power. There was a lot going on in this chapter, so I had to take a break, but I'm ready to get back into it. I'm excited to see what happens next. Okay, where did we last leave off with Rebecca? Woo-wee. All right. So since we last left our hero, she had just had a discussion with her husband. And then he goes away to London or something. I think he's in London. And then she's left to her own devices. And she goes on the little adventure. She's actually kind of excited about being alone again, which is interesting. I thought that was really interesting. And then of course she feels terrible about thinking that, but she's happy to be alone again because she doesn't feel like she has to explain herself to anybody. She can just kind of do what she wants. So she goes off on a little adventure with the dog Jasper, who has decided he likes her. And they run into somebody who gives her a little bit more information, but very mysterious, oblique information about Rebecca. And then she comes back and kind of finds Mrs. Danvers, her nemesis, her main antagonist in this situation, kind of finds her up to something that's suspicious. So she goes and checks out this part of the house, because the house is so big, it has wings. And, you know, it has whole sections where you can even forget that that section's there because the rest of the house is so big. So she goes and checks out this place where she sort of spotted Mrs. Danvers doing something suspicious. And it turns out to be, I think, Rebecca's old bedroom. And then Mrs. Danvers comes and finds her, and wow, the weirdest, creepiest, saddest, most like, what in the nightgown kept in a bag and preserved for posterity is going on here? I'm like, wow, okay. So our heroine is really freaked out by that whole exchange, and I don't blame her. So she's kind of recovering from that, and she gets a call from her sister-in-law, basically her husband's sister, and it's like, hey, you want to go hang out? You want to go toot around the countryside? I mean, basically go visit the grandmother. And our heroine's like, yes, I want to get the F out of here. I like that she has somebody sort of like grounded that is in her circle that she can do things with, because things have gotten really freaky. So our homegirl cannot catch a break, even going to visit the grandma. The grandma's like, where's Rebecca? Oh, I miss Rebecca. I love her so. Maxim was supposed to bring Rebecca. Why doesn't he bring Rebecca? It's like she cannot escape this woman's name. Ever. Y'all, Mrs. Danvers set our girl up. I mean, she really set her up. It was diabolical. The mystery deepens and the plot thickens. I was thinking more about this development when I was taking my walk, and now that I'm putting my Halloween decorations away. But wow, she did a number on her, because not only did she steal her joy, but she also did some significant relationship sabotage, which I'm sure was her whole aim in this thing. And she took advantage of the fact that our MC, she took advantage of her naivete, but I think she even more so took advantage of the fact that our MC is so desperate to believe that people are not out to get her. Oof. Dang. It's getting more and more diabolical. But anyway, okay, there's this scene, there's this line in here where our main character is sort of recalibrating her position after this last attack by her antagonist. And she says, "I could fight the living, but I could not fight the dead." And that made me think of that episode in Sex and the City where Charlotte picks up a guy in a graveyard. He's a widower and he's there visiting his wife's grave, and they meet and they connect, and she's all swooning over him, and Samantha's like, no, you cannot date a widower. And Charlotte's like, why not? And Samantha's like, the dead wife factor, no matter what, she's a saint, and you're the bitch who can't live up to her. I got to a big twist in Rebecca, a twist that I don't remember from the last time I read it, which was years ago. So, wow, now I really want to know what's going on. I did, however, remember the sexy part. Let me caveat that by saying, I mean, as sexy goes in this book, and it's a very short little bit, and it's very fraught with misunderstanding and resentment and fear, but it is a scene that has like some real passion in it that I remember from the first time I read it, and I'm like, ooh, there it is again. I feel like that was what stuck with me from the first time, even more than the twist. I mean, that makes sense. So close. So close. Look at that. Can I get it done tonight? Can I finally finish Rebecca? I did it. I finally finished Rebecca. This might be a slightly incoherent wrap up to this vlog because I'm on this new anti-anxiety medication that my doctor prescribed, and it's making me very loopy. There was a long afternoon nap in my future, probably with strange dreams. But anyway, speaking of dreams, because dreams do play a part in this book, I finished this book. I think I'm Team Rebecca. Now, don't get me wrong. I have been on board with our MC. She has a whole character arc, and I really enjoyed that character arc. Also, Mrs. Danvers, what a great antagonist. There were times when I was actually rooting for her after all of the mean things that she pulled. So you know you've written a good antagonist when you actually understand them and are kind of on their side at some point, because I was at some point. The ending, wow. But the ending was set up. It was set up in the beginning. It was all there. Rebecca was a wild child, and I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Yeah, this actually, I had a feeling this was actually going to play out in the book. There was this whole passage in the beginning, like the first couple chapters of the book, where I was like, I wrote down sexual references and foreshadowing of relationship drama. And here it is. I went back to it and I found it. The rhododendrons stood 50 feet high, twisted and entwined with bracken, and they had entered into alien marriage with a host of nameless shrubs, poor bastard things that clung about their roots as though conscious of their spurious origin. A lilac had mated with a copper beech, and to bind them yet more closely to one another, the malevolent ivy, always an enemy to grace, had thrown her tendrils about the pair and made them prisoners. There's just so much going on there. Like this whole idea of an enemy to grace. So throughout this book, and I think it's part inherent in the times, like there are things that were not specifically said, but you could kind of figure out. And yeah, even within the characters, there was like a lot of, I think, class division that was played out, where some characters would say the thing that the proper ones would not say. But now as an adult reading this, I'm like, oh, I think I see more layers of what's going on here in the writing. And it was kind of really set up in the beginning. It was really interesting to use the dream landscape and the description of the description of nature, wild nature, the idea of nature being sort of free and unfettered. So using nature to sort of foreshadow and hint and describe some of these things that, you know, civilized people don't say was brilliant, in my opinion. So yeah, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I finally finished this book. A lot of things I did not remember from the first time reading it. I think I remembered the very end, or my imagination went wild with the end. I remembered some of the things that I talked about in my previous vlog entry. But yeah, a lot of this was brand new to me. What a trip. What a ride. I'm stoked because this was on my mid-year freakout tag reel where I said this was a book I wanted to finish by the end of the year, because I think I've actually been wanting to reread it for a couple of years. And it was just really, it gave me like, it fired up my imagination with like this manuscript that I was working on as far as how Rebecca was characterized and deployed throughout the whole book. Anyway, yeah. Oh, done. And now we come to the conclusion of this journey of reading Rebecca. Thank you for coming along with me, and remember to like and subscribe. There'll be some more things coming up. I'm really enjoying kind of this rereading the classics that I haven't visited in a long time and looking at them with fresh eyes and viewpoints that come from having lived some life between the last reading. So until next time, bye.